How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Virtual History 360. I'm Mr. Wade, and tonight for my older students, those 8th graders that are 14, 15 years old, just so YouTube knows I'm not talking to children here, we are reviewing for the Judicial Branch test that my students are going to take tomorrow. But if you're tuning in to watch this, you're going to get a lot of information dealing with the Judicial Branch in general. So if you have a test coming up or you just want to know about the Judicial Branch, you're in the right spot. So if you are a student of mine and you are watching this stream live, go ahead and sign in the chat there so I can see who's watching. I'll type in something here. How's it going, guys? Let me know who is here. Boom. Okay. So we got that going on. I got a few viewers in. Give everyone a few minutes to get the notification. Hopefully you guys are getting notifications. Hopefully you can hear me. Logan, long time no see, buddy. How you doing? Ruby, good to see you. Angelica, everyone's coming in. This is awesome. How you guys doing? You having a good night? Whew. I apologize. I'm all discombobulated. My hair's messed up. I'm wearing my sloth t-shirt. You guys see my sloth t-shirt? You like it? My spirit animal? Huh? Funny because, I run a lot. I was setting up for the 5K. I was marking the course for the 5K that we got going on next weekend at Westside. So, Skylar, I see you there. How you doing? Oh, goodness. How you guys feeling? We've been working on the Judicial Branch. I know we crammed in a lot. What do you guys think? Logan, you remember the mock trial we did last year? State versus Alley? I think you'd remember that, right? What do you guys think about that? My kids, Logan, whoever. What do you guys think about that mock trial? I enjoyed it. What do you guys think? Let's get this chat blowing up. Let's see. Alrighty. So. Good that you're doing good, Skylar. How's the studying going? Have you been working on the study guide at all? On this? Remember this? Logan, that's what we just finished today. We just wrapped up the study, or the mock trial. Alright, we got about a minute or so, and I know there's a delay, but my watch says 7:59. I thought so too, Angelica. My watch says 7:59. I'm going to give you another minute before we start talking more in depth. But like always, even though there's a delay, leave your questions, leave your comments, drop them in the chat there. I will read them. I will talk about them. Anything that you have concerns about that you're a little weak on, or you're concerned that you don't fully grasp that I could explain for you, that's what I want you to leave in those for me, okay? You finish the study guide, good. Oh man, you're going to do so awesome tomorrow. Alright, if you think you know the answers that someone else answers, by all means jump in, help each other out, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to help everyone. We're here to make sure things go smoothly tomorrow, and to do that, we're putting in the work tonight. So I want to say I appreciate the people that are stopping in to check this out. He is guilty. You know what? Possession is 9/10 of the law, right? Just saying. Alright. Logan, you have a good night. I appreciate you stopping by, okay, buddy? Hope high school's treating you well. Let's see where we at. Alright, it's 8 o'clock on my watch. Probably a little before, with the delay. So, what do you say we get started? Alright. So, I don't think this stream, honestly, looking at what we've covered, it's been a very short unit, right? I mean, 2 weeks. We didn't cover that much information. We've hit a lot multiple times, but I don't think this stream needs to be long because frankly, there's not that much you guys need to do. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to go over some of the basics. And as I'm going over this, just leave questions in the chat. Now, if you're watching this on replay, by all means, leave a comment and I'll reply to the comment. Okay? So let's get started with the Judicial Branch. Well, where do we start? Well, what article in the Constitution? It's Article 3, right? So we've covered Article 1, the Legislative Branch. Article 2, the Executive Branch. And then finally, Article 3, the Judicial Branch. The 3 branches of government. Thank you, Mr. Montesquieu, in separating the powers, right? So, we have the Judicial Branch set up. The only court that the Constitution actually sets up is the Supreme Court. It says the Supreme Court and then any court that the legislative branch shall deem necessary. So really, the only court that the Constitution talks about is the Supreme Court, and it lays out a bunch of the stuff there. Not many requirements. You just have to be appointed or nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. But that's about it. In fact, the Constitution doesn't even give the judicial branch that much power. I mean, seriously, they don't give them anything. It wasn't until 1803 in the Supreme Court case Marbury v. Madison that John Marshall decides to give the Supreme Court power. That's the power of judicial review, meaning that the Supreme Court's job is now to interpret whether laws and actions are constitutional or not. Okay? Now, next unit, when we get into the amendments, in 2 units, when we get to the landmark Supreme Court cases, we'll definitely hit on Marbury v. Madison a lot harder. But let me just tell you, it's a crazy story. Okay? And we'll get to that little foreshadowing down the road. All right? So, that is the judicial branch, in a nutshell. You watched my video, Supreme Court. If you didn't and you need to write your summary, remember, that's due by tomorrow. All right. So, that's, the nitty gritty, comes after that, I guess. We got to talk about, the court systems themselves. Now, when we talk about the court systems, know that there's 2 different kinds, okay? And that makes no sense. So I'm just going to move on. Why are there 2 different types of courts? Okay, you have the state courts, you have the federal courts. Now, federal courts are what the Constitution talks about, but because of the reserved powers, the state courts have a lot to do as well. So what the Constitution does is the Constitution spells out what the federal courts can do, leaving anything that's not listed to the states. That's pretty straightforward, right? Because just like the reserve amendments, okay? Now, when we talk about state courts, we talk about federal courts, they're set up pretty much similar, okay? There's some little changes here and there, and each state can change it a little bit, but really, they're about the same. You have different levels all the way up to the top. Now, use the example. Yeah, I'm hoping that you're taking away something about the judicial branch and I. All right. But basically, and I'm going to use the federal courts as an example here, but know that the state courts are very similar, okay? So you have the trial courts. That's the district courts. Remember, at the federal level, there's 94 of them, right? Science. You have to talk to Ms. Swiderski about that one. District courts. That's the trial courts. Remember, trial courts get what's called original jurisdiction. What is jurisdiction? Your vocab, think about that. Jurisdiction is the ability to hear a case, okay? But think about this. And again, going back to Marbury v. Madison, this is why John Marshall was such a genius, because he knew that the president might not listen to him. So he said, listen, we don't have original jurisdiction. So courts, if they don't have original jurisdiction, should not hear the case, okay? So you have that. Let's see, Hannah. What is the job of the Court of Appeals? Perfect timing, because I was just about to talk about that. So you have that trial court, that district court, right? They hear the case the first time. Now, if the person that's being tried does not like the outcome of that case, they can then take it to the next level. And that is the Court of Appeals, the appellate courts. Remember, appellate, appeals. Think of it as one as the same, just to help with the words, okay? Their job is to review the lower court. The purpose of an appeal is to make sure that they got it right. If you get arrested for murder, I'm going to use a big example here, right? And you get found guilty, but you didn't do it, you then go to the Court of Appeals, and you can appeal for a couple different reasons. One, the police messed up and they, violated your search rights, right? Fourth Amendment. Or, the law that they're being tried, not murder, I guess that's not a good example, but, the law that they convicted you of was unconstitutional. Or 3, frankly, the court's messed up and they, there's a loophole where they didn't follow the rules. So you can appeal that and then get your conviction overturned. That is the purpose of the Court of Appeals. So you have the district court, you have the Court of Appeals, right? Now, remember there were 94 districts, 12 appellate courts, okay? The circuit courts. Now, say you're not happy with the result of the Court of Appeals. You have one more stop. You can take that to the Supreme Court. There's only one of those, and that is the final word. That is the last stop. The buck stops here when it comes to appeals. Make sense? Now, when you get to those 3 levels, and like I said, it goes kind of similar, What goes in a legal case? Skylar, I'm going to ask you to clarify that. What do you mean by legal case? Are you talking about the different kinds of trials? And I'll explain that in just a second. What happens in a legal case? Okay. Actually, I'm going to pause and circle to that because trial courts will hear two different kinds of cases. So if you're talking about legal cases, you have criminal cases where you're accused of committing a crime. Okay? If it's the person versus the state, or the person versus the country, if it's a federal offense, then it is a criminal case. Okay? You don't have, you have the prosecutor for the state trying to prove that the person committed the crime. Criminal. It's against the law to, run a red light. So if you go to court, that is a criminal case because you committed a crime, right? The other one is civil. Civil is when it's not against the law and it's between two people. So you don't like that I'm giving you a test tomorrow, so you sue me for, emotional damage for giving you a test tomorrow. Well, guess what? That is not criminal. I didn't break a law by giving you a test tomorrow, but you still sue me because you say, oh my goodness, this 12-question test is too much work. It's not. But anyway, you say, I want you to pay me damages. That is a civil case. It's you versus me. Okay? No crime, not criminal, civil. Divorce is a civil case. Murder is a criminal case. Okay? Let's see what else we got on here. What happens in legal case? Let's talk about you charge murder. Yep, see? I'm with you. I got you. Okay? So, the easiest way to tell the difference if you're looking at different cases and you want to know whether it's a civil case or a criminal case is to just look at who's involved. Like our mock trial today was the state versus Allie, right? Well, obviously that means it's a criminal case because the state is prosecuting Allie. But if it's a civil case, then it'll be someone's name versus someone else's name. Okay? See if there's anything I'm missing now. Okay. Does that make sense? So if it's someone versus someone or someone else, then that will be a civil case. They're just suing each other. This person wants this person to repair their damages. Okay? And I think you can figure that one out. Just saying. Now, what else? I mean, this is what I was getting at. Okay, so I'm glad I answered that, but let me get back to that. We have the Supreme Court at the top. District, appeals, Supreme. States, basically the same thing. Florida has the same thing. They have the lower courts, they have the appeals courts, and then they have the Florida State Supreme Court. Just remember, if there is a Supreme Court, whether it be national or state, that is the highest court. Okay, as long as you know that is the most powerful court, the last or the end of the line, you got this. Okay. Thank you for helping me out, Angelica. I appreciate it. Okay? Let's see. What else do we need to know? Oh, goodness. Phone's blowing up. Who's talking to me? Don't send me messages now. I'm in the middle of a live stream. All right. Let's see. I mean, the best part about this, and, the first half of the year, we covered just a lot of just stuff. Now we're actually getting to the part where we're applying it. So, one thing I want you to be able to do with this unit is to apply what we're learning as we, learn it and then put it into use, okay? So, a trial with no jury would be a bench trial. Yes, Hannah, a bench trial just means the judge decides, okay? So, an example of that, I know I'm segueing or tangent from this. It's called a bench. That's where the judge sits. If you ever watch TV, Law and Order, and they say, may I approach the bench? That's because that's what the seat of the judge is called. So if the judge is deciding it, it's a bench trial. Okay? Amaris, don't have a Kahoot code. Nope, that's why I gave you guys that study guide. That's why you're talking to me now. Okay? If you just look up Judicial Branch, I'm sure you can find something. It's not specific to us, but just do a search for Judicial Branch and play those. That'll help you. I don't have one specifically for you. Okay? So, let's see. Like I said, first half of the year we're covering a lot of stuff. But just remember that, let's go back in history a little bit. Before we were the United States, I'm going to ask you this question. I want you guys to answer this in the chat. Before we were the United States, who were we a part of? We were colonies of what country? Okay, so I'm going to leave that question. Who were we colonies of? What country controlled us before we had a revolution and became the United States? Okay? All right. Let's see. What else do I want to talk about? How many questions of the test? There are 12. Oh, also, think back to those Latin phrases that we talked about. We're going to spend more time on them as we get to the Supreme Court cases, but I just want you to be aware of what each one means. I don't know if this is Latin, but remember we talked about jurisdiction. I think it's kind of based on that. Is the fact that, the court can hear a case, right? Then we talked about stare decisis, where the court lets the decision stand, right? So just know about some of those. What was the other ones? We didn't do ex post facto yet. We did that with legislative, right? What else did we cover this unit? Habeas corpus, having the body. What else? Go ahead and drop those in the chat, those Latin phrases, so we can talk about those, okay? Let's see. Skylar, you got it. We were colonies of England, right? So when we wanted to create our own government, who do you think influenced us the most? Did we just reinvent everything? No, we took what was already working and just kind of made it fit. So our laws, that we already had when we were colonies, became the same laws we had when we became the states and the country. Does that make sense? So we didn't reinvent the wheel. We just modified it to make it, change the name, to make it fit us. So the English laws that we lived under when we were colonies became the American laws when we became the United States. Okay? You don't know those Latin phrases? Oh, what else? De novo, new, hear the case new without ever thinking about anything else. What else? A writ of certiorari, right? What was the writ of certiorari? To be fully informed, get all the information for the case. What about an amicus brief? Amicus curiae, friend of the court. Very good, Angelica. It is difficult. Hannah asks, why is it difficult to take a case to the Supreme Court? Because thousands of people, petition the Supreme Court to hear a case, and they pick about 100 or so. You're just playing the odds at that point. Okay? So, think about that. What else we got to talk? Just know that, oh, goodness. Just know the different levels. Work the way bottom to top, original jurisdictions at the bottom, and then you can appeal it all the way up, okay? So, like I said, thousands of people try, but you want to appeal so that they can review those lower court cases, okay? And that can be both criminal or civil. Doesn't have to just be one or the other. A civil case can make its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. That happens, as long as they see that it's a constitutional issue, the Supreme Court will review it. So you have, instances where a person will sue a company, right? It's not criminal. There's no prosecution. There's no crime. But a person will sue a company and, they'll make it all the way up to the Supreme Court because it's a constitutional issue. So people can sue companies. That happens. Let's see. What we got here? Do you have to go through the Supreme? Do you have to? No. No. Honestly, you don't have to. If you are unhappy with the decision, you probably want to. But remember when we watched the video from Mr. Beat and how expensive a murder trial appealed all the way to the Supreme Court can be? Over $100,000. So maybe you can't afford it. That's not fair too, but it is what it is, I guess. So let's see. How are we looking right now? It's 8:15, and we pretty much covered the big stuff, didn't we? What questions do you guys have? I'll give you a second to type it up there. If a law is unconstitutional, what happens? The Supreme Court rules that it must be null and void. The Supreme Court will strike it down. That's part of the checks and balances. Checks and balances. The Supreme Court's job is to say if a law is unconstitutional, the Constitution comes first, and anything that breaks, that's the supremacy clause, anything that breaks the Constitution doesn't count, must be canceled. Okay? That's what happens. Very good. Is there a code of practice? All right, I'm gonna say Mr. Santiago's class. If you're one of his students, 99% sure you are not taking the test tomorrow. You might. There's a chance. I haven't talked to him about it, but I'm pretty sure you probably won't. But it's a good thing you're studying so that you're ready for it. All right, and there is no code to practice because we haven't put anything together. But if you do look up Judicial Branch, if you just do a search on Kahoo for Judicial Branch, you should be able to find them. Okay. How come the jury box decides whether they're innocent or guilty? That is your Sixth Amendment right to a jury by your peers. Okay, and we're going to hit the amendments, in greater detail next unit. But you want to be tried by people that are like you, right? Because think about this: if you are not tried by people like you, people don't share the same life experiences as you, people that don't live in the same area as you. Are they going to understand what happened? Are they going to be able to look at the big picture? Are they, see the context? No, they're probably just going to pass judgment without thinking. So you want the jury. That is your constitutional right to have a jury decide your case, because you don't want the, prosecutor who wants you to go to jail to decide the case. You want people who have no interest, outside of being in this courtroom, in your life. They don't know you. They just live in the same area. You want them because they are unbiased. That's why it's important to have an unbiased jury. And you want that because that is the most fair you can have, or the most fairness you can have in a courtroom. Okay? Let's see, what else we got to talk about. We talked about that. Like I said, just remember that criminal is when there's a crime involved. Civil is when there's no crime and it's two sides going back and forth. Let me ask you this. If you're under 18, can you go to regular prison? Like, if say you guys 14-year-olds, 14, 15-year-olds. If you get arrested, do you go to regular jail? Anyone know what that's called? Angelica, yes, that is Amendment 6. Hannah, what happens if an appellate court upholds a verdict? Then you either accept it or you go to the next level. Because remember, it's district, appellate, and then Supreme Court. Okay? So, back to my question. If you are 14 years old and you get arrested, do you go to regular jail? Or where do you go? No, Miguel, you're right. You do not go to regular jail. Do anyone know what it's called? You go to a juvenile detention center. Looks like you're saying juvie. Yeah, juvie hall. That's what I always call it. You go to a juvenile detention center because you are a juvenile. That's the legal term for someone that's not an adult. Okay? So just know that these laws, you're still upheld. You're still, supposed to not break the law. But there are special instances for juveniles. And I think that's important. That's more foreshadowing than anything. But that's important moving forward when we get to the Supreme Court cases, like specifically Tinker versus Des Moines, because they were juveniles. Okay? They weren't adults. All right? That's okay. I'm not worried about spelling today. No worries, man. Okay? All right, talking about the Supreme Court. How many justices are on the Supreme Court? Can you answer that for me? I will give you a hint that there's one Chief Justice. But how many justices are in the Supreme Court? And I'll share a story with you while you guys are answering that question. Not this past summer, but the summer before, I was in Tallahassee, and I actually met Florida Supreme Court Justice Peggy Quince, and unfortunately she is retired now. Let's see, why are the courthouses separated? To funnel, I guess. And yes, Angelica, there's 9. You got it. Florida doesn't have 9. States don't always have 9. They don't always have the same number of justices. But there are Supreme Court justices. And what's really interesting was Peggy Quince, when I met her, she was on her way out. I met her in June, I think it was. June, not this past summer, but the summer before. And she was about to turn 70. And in Florida, if you turn 70, you have to retire. They force you to retire from being a Supreme Court justice. It's called aging out. That's different than the Supreme Court, because how long do federal Supreme Court justices get to serve for? All right, so you guys are answering 9. That is perfect. Again, Florida doesn't have the same number, but the national is 9. Florida, I told you about Peggy Quince and how she hit 70 and had to age out and retire, which she enjoyed. She took a world cruise. She said that was her plan once she retired in that January. But what about at the federal Supreme Court? Article 3 of the Constitution, Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. How long do they get to serve for? If you get appointed and nominated and confirmed as a Supreme Court justice, how long do you get to serve for? Let's see. See if you guys can tell me that. All right. Let's see. They serve for life. Good job, Hannah. You got it. All right. And I'm just going through papers here, just looking to see. Just know the levels of the courts, right? This way tomorrow, do we turn and start yet? No, you don't have to turn that in. That was just for you. If you did the crossword and you answered those questions, you're going to nail the test. That's what it was for, okay? You serve as long as you can for life. The only way you leave the court is if you die, retire, or you commit a crime and they impeach you, okay? What would happen if they say you're guilty but you're innocent and you get sent to jail and later on they find out you're innocent? Well, the way they would find out you're innocent is that you appeal your case to the next level and they set you free. Deja, that's it. Obviously it sucks that you were in jail for any amount of time if you're innocent, but the hope is that you will correct the mistake. Okay? And speaking of that, correcting mistakes, we mentioned this earlier. Yeah, thank you, Miguel and Angelica. You got this, okay? We talked about how the Supreme Court can make mistakes, right? The Supreme Court case, Plessy v. Ferguson, right? That was the case of segregated train cars in Louisiana, which I actually saw his grave, and I learned that he was a pariah in the town after because he failed at this, because they tried to desegregate the trains, and the Supreme Court said, nah, separate but equal. If they're equal, it's good. It's not unconstitutional. Even though it goes against the Equal Rights Clause of the 14th Amendment. But anyway, the Supreme Court ruled that separate but equal is okay. But it comes down to Brown v. Board, 56 years or whatever, 57 years later, and they said, you know what, separate but equal is inherently not equal if you are separate. So they fixed it. So the Supreme Court can overturn their previous decisions, okay? So even though we said that there are no more, stops above them, if you need to, if they mess up, and the Supreme Court does, and we've just gave you an example, if the Supreme Court does mess up, then they can overturn their own, okay? They went against themselves, that's right. But, you know what, they're correcting a mistake and they're making it better. I mean, we're human, they make mistakes, and you don't like to see the Supreme Court make mistakes, but it happens. Plessy v. Ferguson, Dred Scott, those are examples of that. But they did fix it. They did go back, and they do look at their cases again because other instances get brought to them, and they say, listen, most of the time, stare decisis. Precedent has been set, but they do take a look at it, and they realize that they messed up, and they fix it. So that's kind of a good thing. Okay? So I'm going to say, if you know the court levels, you know how the Supreme Court works, you know civil, criminal, you guys got this. Here's what I would recommend. Once I log off of here, it's going to take a second to process. Watch this again. Watch it tonight, watch it in the morning, watch it before class. It'll help you, okay? But I'm going to say, if you have any last minute questions, now's the time to ask, because I think I've covered just about everything I want to talk about. Now I want to turn it over to you, what you guys want to talk about, and then once we cover all of those, I'm going to call it a night. So, got a few minutes. What do you guys need help with? What are the last few things you need help with? What are you confused about, or you just want to touch on one more time? Drop it in the chat, and I'll answer as best I can, okay? What is a trial court? What happens in a trial court? Trial court, that's the low level. That is the district court. That's at the bottom. That's the first court that will hear a case, whether it be civil or criminal. Trial court has original jurisdiction because that is where. Now, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction for some things, okay? So just know that that's, an option, if it deals with multiple states or foreign countries. But the trial court is that district court. They get the bulk of cases. If it's a divorce or a lawsuit or a criminal case, local, that is going to start in the trial court. First ones to hear it. Now, if there's mistakes or they want to appeal, that's when you start getting to the bigger courts, okay? Let's see. What is a trial court? The answer to that. Trial court is a court that takes control of civil cases, marriage. Asks 2 more questions. What 2 questions do you want to ask, Angelica? Let's see. What can I ask you? All right, Skylar, you take care. What's the order for a Court of Appeals? Not sure I understand the question because the Court of Appeals is the order. It's number 2, if that's what you're asking. District Court, Court of Appeals, Supreme Court. Okay, so it's in the middle, right? District Court, Appellate Court, Supreme Court. All right. What are the facts in a case called? If you're think about the mock trial and you're dealing with Allie and you have the backpack itself, okay? What's that called? What do the lawyers present in a trial to try and prove their point? What's that called? That's one question. And then what is the decision of a trial court called? What does the jury render? What does the jury decide? What's that called? So I'm looking for 2 words there. Okay? The order of the Supreme Court's number 3. So, District Court, Appellate or Appeals Court, Supreme Court. 1, 2, 3. Okay? So, looking for those 2 words. Okay? What's it called? The stuff that they introduce to court to try and prove their point. And then what's the decision called? Okay. So the first thing I got there is evidence. We got that. Evidence is what is given in trial. There you go. And then evidence was what tries to prove point. And then verdict is the decision of a trial court. Now, I'm going to ask one more question on top of that. If a verdict is in the trial court, what do they call it at the Supreme Court? It's not a verdict. It's something else. What's it called at the Supreme Court level? Verdict is a decision. Like in our mock trial, the jury rendered the verdict for Allie. But if it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, would it be? It's not called a verdict. What would it be called? What you got? And then I'm going to say, as you're typing that in, last chance. It's almost 8:30. It's time for my bed, right? Deja, who appoints federal judges? Well, that would be the president. The president appoints them, but that doesn't mean they have the job. They still have to be confirmed by the Senate. Name of decision, but I'm looking for the name of decisions, Miguel. Specifically, the Supreme Court has a specific word I'm looking for. So, Deja, in case you missed it, the president appoints federal judges, Supreme Court justices and federal judges, and then the Senate has to confirm them. All right, what do we got for the Supreme Court? What's the name of a verdict in the Supreme Court? They don't use the term verdict, it's something else. Affirm? That's a good guess. I'll give you a hint. It starts with an O. Does that help you? Opinion. That is right, Miguel. You got it. The Supreme Court delivers opinions. Okay. All right, guys. What else you got before I let go? Now, it can be unanimous. Because remember, there's 9 justices on the Supreme Court. And 9-0, unanimous. Everyone agrees. But really all it takes is a majority. A majority to reach an opinion. Okay? Hannah, not verdict. At the Supreme Court level, it's called an opinion. Okay? 5-4, 6-3, 7-2, 8-1. You just need a majority. And then you have the majority opinion. Remember, we also talked about having a concurring opinion where you vote with the majority, but you vote for a different reason. Okay? And that happens. And then if there's not unanimous consent, but you have, 5-4, you will also have the dissenting, dissenting opinion. Okay? All right, guys. It is a little past 8:30. How is a chief judge selected? It's basically picked by the Supreme Court themselves. Tenure plays into it. They don't let the rookie become chief justice. All right. I don't know. I answer questions, not ask them. I can see that. All right. You guys are awesome. You guys are putting in the time. I know you're going to do awesome tomorrow. Okay? So, I'm going to get off here. It's 8:30. I'm tired. It's been a long day. Selected by the group. Very good. All right. If you have more questions, drop them in the comments. Other people can answer them if they need to. Help each other out. But you did the study guide. You came on here. You talked to me. You answered my questions. You listened to me again because I know how much you love hearing my voice. You guys are going to do fine tomorrow. I am not worried about you. I know when I scan those tests tomorrow, you guys are going to do awesome. Okay? Have faith that you will do fine. You put in the work, it will pay off. Okay? Good night, guys. I appreciate you guys coming in here. Have a good night. Good luck tomorrow. All right. Bye, guys.